You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And No, you're not. We are. We are the hosts for this show.
We are.
Yeah, it's like, all right, nothing like going into this show messing up the intro. This is going to be a long one. Long day, folks. Long day. Sorry about that. But hey, at least we're here at 8 o'clock tonight, live, which I know we've actually had to play with some of the times for a while. But hey, how could we not do this, right? Because I got to say, the deeper that I get into this Tales of the Jedi series, obviously, the better it becomes. I mean, I still think that it was an interesting choice that they started with that Ahsoka episode. I remember saying that, right from the top. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think that it's kind of the same thing. The more that I watch, after the last episode and now this one, it's like, that's a really interesting choice that they didn't make the Ahsoka episode maybe more like the middle one. But as somebody who's actually seen the whole series, I mean, does that shed any light on it, or is it kind of a mystery to you, or what?
Well, I mean, I think for me, I'm glad that they started this series off with that one, because it's like, okay, at least from that point, and that was a good episode. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, it was a great episode.
But I think as you will find out, it definitely goes up from there, I should say. So I'm happy that at least it's always on the upward trajectory, as rather than like, okay, we start off really good and then you get that type of episode, which was still good, but it's like compared to the rest that we will see, it's kind of like, yeah, you will probably say I'd rather have that one just kick it off and then everything goes up from there, versus it starts off like really, really hot and then it's like, okay, what? Like, why would you stick this in the middle when we were going so well? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the thing that's funny about it is that you would almost look at that first episode like a filler episode, even though the reality is it tells a really huge, monumental thing, which is how Ahsoka got into the Jedi Order. So, I mean, you can't really call it a filler, but,
But compared to the ones we will see, it's a filler.
Yeah. Oh, without question. And speaking of that, I mean, now we're at episode 3. This one's called Choices. And again, this is another one featuring Dooku again, which I thought was interesting because the last one featured him, this one featured him, and this one, whereas the last one kind of had that sort of creepy vibe in the beginning, this one I thought actually started out the way that I really wish it had continued this way, because, as you know, I've always thought that Star Wars should go into more like a genre direction, to where they take on a genre of films or something like that, or television, and just make that, but taking place in the Star Wars universe. And what I really loved about the very beginning of this episode, of course, it sets up the death of Master let me see. I actually have it. Katri. So they obviously have to go and, they're trying to find out what's up. And it sets up this whole story. But then it was almost like when they were getting there, it was almost like a murder mystery type of a thing, It was kind of like they were trying to piece together what happened. And I kind of wish...
like detectives.
Yeah. Detective Dooku, exactly. And I really wish that they had stuck with that for this up. I mean, if I had one criticism of this episode, and believe me, I mean, well, number one, they're pretty short, right? So unless they really drop the ball, there's not a whole lot you can say. But if I were going to say, in an otherwise near flawless episode, the only criticism that I had is I really wish that they had done that they had taken it into a more murder mystery direction. But again, somebody could easily counter that and say, well, okay, they kind of did though, but they only had like 15 minutes. This isn't like an hour show.
Yeah.
But they still could
Right.
have played with that formula though. They kind of took it into the whole Dooku starting to get a little disenfranchised with the Jedi Order thing. I mean, not quite openly, but you can see that the seeds have been planted there. And I thought that, okay, they're going to go more in that direction and in the direction of Mace is kind of the Obi-Wan and Dooku's kind of like the Qui-Gon, I mean, you got one guy going by the book and following the rules and trusting the council, and the other guy going, wait a second, I mean, let's really look at this for what it is, kind of a thing. And I just wish that they had maybe given that a rest for this and just done a really cool whodunit style murder mystery.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of had a Knives Out feel.
Exactly.
That's kind of what it gave. It's like a Knives Out, which I love. I mean, and I would love to see. It doesn't have to be necessarily a continuation of that, but I would love to see more stories in that. Like because Jedi being able to use their perception and use the Force in that type of manner to find out, like, okay, I sense, betrayal, I sense lies, but I got to figure out where it's coming from, how it happened, things like that. And I think this, once you, like you said, that would be a good genre to even go into. And I think that's kind of what this series kind of shows, that you can build certain genres out of Star Wars, just using they're just using these familiar characters. But I really enjoyed this episode as well. I enjoyed
it's like
seeing
you're
Mace
wrapping
and
it up.
Dooku
All right,
together.
well, overall,
No.
it's gonna
Well, the
be like
show's 15 minutes. I
Hey,
figure
right?
we do if it
Exactly.
But no, I mean, I really did enjoy seeing Mace and Dooku together, because that's something
That was cool.
we never got a chance to see that. We never
Mhm.
got to see Dooku on that side. So to see him interact with Master Windu was cool. And to see that they were more colleagues than anything, they're
Mhm.
like, okay, they kind of came up together in this. And I think that was
You know,
kind of gave me that Markinson and Jessup
I was
thing from a few
just
good men.
about to
That's
just about to say that. The whole, well, I've been promoted through the ranks a little faster than
Thanks.
you. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, man. So
Especially the
you
ending.
get it. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, all right, so that, to that point, you see the tension brooding within Dooku. It's like, okay, he's mistrusting. Now he's getting passed over on stuff.
Mhm.
So it's really just kind of building that frustration within him on all sides. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about this particular episode.
Well, here's what's interesting looking at that part of it. Because again, I mean, if you guys are watching this, it's not like we're going to go into a linear fashion through this thing. We're just, it's kind of,
Yeah, just talking about it.
Yeah, and especially since it's only a 15-minute episode, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really more about the themes and some of the stuff that happens into it. I mean, yeah, sure, we're going to pull apart specific scenes, but we're going to be pretty much all over the place on this. One of the things that I thought was interesting is that you see what you actually would maybe, when you're looking at it, you might go, oh, this is kind of an Anakin thing. This is a little bit of a repeat of the Anakin Obi-Wan conversation, in a sense. However, Anakin and Dooku are completely different people. So how they're handling it is a little bit different. So I thought that was really intriguing, where, yeah, he's being passed over, but I mean, I think a lot of it, where Dooku is concerned, and he kind of foreshadows this a little bit when he's talking to Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones, But his whole thing is like, okay, he understands, like, the Jedi are starting to become puppets of the wealthy and the rich and the powerful. And it's not really about peacekeeping. It's really more about protecting the wealth of these, intergalactic fat cats, for lack of a better term. And,
Mm-hmm.
Dooku's starting to see, like, hey, if we're not careful, I mean, sure, we're always saying, we're not getting involved in the politics and all that, and they're not. But in a way, they're almost becoming blinded by what's really going on in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, and that's always the conundrum with the when you bring the political side of things into it. And I think that's the way that, once again, Palpatine being the mastermind that he is. See, and that's the thing about politics, because politics can be very sketchy and very subjective. And so a lot of times with people, it's their emotional connection to politics. And you could see how somebody like Dooku, who once again is a very powerful Jedi, you can see like, okay, look, we should be doing this with our power, and everybody kind of has an idea of what we should be doing with this great power that we have. And then, it's always like, okay, well, there's always some little thing where it's like it could take you either light or dark, and that's what's really happening here is idealism, it creeps in, and now people are starting to say like, okay, well, and you need somebody that's going to really balance you out
Mm-hmm.
and kind of and that's why Master Yoda is always so wise in these moments like this, because you have to like really delve deep beyond the surface level of some things and really kind of say like, okay, but at our core, what do we do? Who are we? And that's what keeps you balanced, really, in your why. And watching Dooku and play this out with Mace, and that's what the cool thing for me, because Mace is kind of a darker character anyway.
Right.
So you got two dark characters with each other on a mission, but like one of them is trying to stay more level-headed, and that's the thing about Mace, because even his lightsaber, it means that the reason why it's purple is because he balances light and dark. And so in certain situations, even like this one, he could see Dooku's point on some things, but at the same time, he's kind of like, well, we kind of need to just do it by the book, though. And the fact that Dooku wasn't able to lure Mace into the darker side really also shows credence to how powerful Mace is, as far as being able to keep that line between light and dark.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, because I can't remember offhand who Mace's master was. Because we all know that the Dooku's master was Yoda. So it makes
Hmm.
me wonder, who Mace's master was. I mean, everybody, when they're younglings or whatever, at some point gets Yoda training them, but then he hands them off to, some other
Somebody
master or
else.
whatever. Yeah. Whereas in very rare occasions, and in this case, he took on Dooku. And of course, for a really good backstory, and again, all of Star Wars canon pretty much exists these days to really enrich, I guess would be the best word, some of these stories, because now we're at a point in the franchise where some of the books and everything and comics or whatever that's already come out, even in the new canon I'm talking about, I'm not talking about Legends. When you're actually watching something like a Tales of the Jedi, there's a lot of details in there that are brought up. So when you look at a book like Jedi Lost, and even to a degree Master and Apprentice, you actually, I guess, look at this episode a little bit differently than if you just saw it without having read either of those books. And
Yeah.
you actually, Well, Master and Apprentice still stands as the only book review we've ever done on the show, I think. I mean, we might have done one other one, but I'm pretty sure that Master and Apprentice was the one, because I remember we had to time it to where, we both read it, and then we were able to do the show on it. But even though I don't think we did a review on Jedi Law, I know we discussed it. I don't know if we did an actual full-blown review, but I know both of us read it.
Mm-hmm.
And you finished it, but I think it was one of those cases where I finished it first, and then, there was that joke like, "Hey, did you read the, that kind of thing?" Yeah. And then, you had finally finished it too. So then we were able to talk about it a little bit more completely. But those are the kinds of things that if you go back and you read that, particularly that one, that really shines a light on this episode to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. And really that book was really a released Clone Wars episode.
Yeah, it's like unproduced completely. It's like a script, and I remember that was one of the things that, it's like, ooh.
Yeah, because when I first opened the book, I was like, "Why?"
I know,
like, this is weird.
Exactly, It was written in script form. I'm like, are they doing this on? I mean, I thought it was just some kind of, just like a
new style or something.
Yeah, or something that they were playing with or whatever. Maybe they were, but it was really odd the way that was happening. But yeah, that did make it a little bit tough. I remember that it took a little bit, and there were some people that were chatting live with us during the time we were talking about that book, where some of them put it down. Other people, it was kind of like us, where once you got used to the writing style, you can get into it a little bit more, because you learn a lot about Asajj Ventress on that side too. And through this episodes like this Tales of the Jedi episode, you could see a little bit about why Asajj would be drawn to somebody like Dooku.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the disillusions that people have, when it comes to the Jedi Order. It's like I say, it's very reminiscent of what you see here in the real world. Some people may choose a side, whether it be Democrat or Republican, or and they may be thought, they may all their lives they were taught to be one way because that's how their family grew up, and so this is what it has to be. And then they start to discover the world for themselves, and then they start to see their own truth, and they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, and why do we do this? And okay, maybe this was it at one point, but now look at it. So maybe I'm on the wrong side of things. Maybe I need to create my own, or just step away altogether, because I don't believe what I once believed anymore because of the things that I'm seeing. And that's what I think that's one of the greatest tricks that Palpatine pulled, was finding people and creating that doubt.
Yep.
Creating that plausible doubt. Like, okay, are you sure? Because this is going on and that's going on, and you were sent to do this. Why would they tell you to do that if that were true? So he's putting that doubt, quietly putting that doubt in your mind. And then you start to see things that support it from a certain point of view. Now that they've kind of made you aware of it, and you're like, and now you start to see the slow descent into the dark.
Well, and it kind of makes you wonder a couple of things too. Number one, I almost wonder at what point does Palpatine start convincing Dooku of what he's already... I mean, obviously, I think that... I'm trying to remember exactly. They don't talk about how far back some of these episodes go, right? Like, I mean, we could guess. I'm not really sure how long Mace was on the council, because obviously he's just put on the council in this episode. So you would have to figure out, okay, how long has Mace been on the council? Dooku's still sporting brown hair, so unless he's doing the hair dye thing,
just for men.
Yeah, exactly. Just for counts.
Just for Sith.
Exactly. Some of those dark side powers, some would consider to be unnatural. So just putting it, yes. and hair dyeing is one. But I mean, we don't really know exactly how far. I mean, we could guess. We can probably use context clues and things like that. But that's not something we're going to do right now. Of course, if you're out there and you want to do it and put that in the comment section, feel free. We love stuff like that. But the thing is that you see that Dooku is starting to come onto these realizations by himself. And it wasn't. The interesting thing about this is it didn't start out to be dark, really. I mean, it started to be probably the opposite. It's Dooku's going, hey, listen, there are people that are starting to use us for their own gain, and we need to start looking at that more closely and start to see through it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of a nobility there. It wasn't quite where, like, say, Anakin was coming from, where it was Anakin's problem was it was based on pride. It's like, look, I'm better than a lot of you guys. Why am I not on the council? I mean, hello, chosen one. I mean, and from a certain point of view, you can understand his dismay, but, that's all coming from a point of pride.
Well, partially. I mean, see, I think Anakin has a few issues that kind of caused his descent. Was that one, fear, number being the ultimate one of losing Padme, like he lost his mother. And see, the thing is, it kind of goes into that pride thing, but it's also the fear of not being good enough. See, because when you look at it from the perspective of, all right, he wasn't able to save his mother. Now he's facing this whole situation where he possibly may never not be able to save his wife. On top of that, so he's still feeling like he's not strong enough to do it. Then the council grants him the rank of being on the council. I mean, the title of being on the council, but not the rank of master. So you're still not good enough. It's like, okay, well, how can I be on the council and everybody on the council is a master, but you're not granting me the rank of master? Oh, well, we're putting you on the council because now we want to be able to keep tabs, have you report to us consistently about really your friend Palpatine. So really, we don't think you really should be on the council, but we're doing it just for our personal gain of getting information out of you. So once again, it's that the perpetuation of the thought that not good enough. And that is partially his downfall when he knows he's more powerful than a lot of people, yet people keep telling him that, well, just wait, be patient, and he's just like, but for what? What am I really waiting on? Like, what haven't I done that I haven't proven to be successful in? Why are you, and I think that combined is what really drove Anakin, off the deep end, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. I mean, without question. It's just a lot of times the pride comes into it, and then that prevents him from seeing through a lot of this stuff. And, I mean, look, you got to cut Anakin a little bit of a break here because he's had Palpatine in his ear since he was like 10 years old, It's, I mean, really, he had no hope. I mean, sure.
He really had no sure. Yeah.
He could have listened maybe a little bit more to Yoda and Mace and all that. And Mace always seemed to have it out for him. So you can understand. And that's where Mace made his mistake, is the fact that he made his mistrust of Anakin so clear that it sort of pushed Anakin away. And it was only at the very end that he realized that, and it was too late at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I think you're seeing here, though, but from a different perspective, because Dooku doesn't have any of these issues. But yet, it's very much the same type of thing. It's again, the people are starting to use us, and nobody can see through that. Everybody's so blinded by their devotion to keeping the peace and doing all this stuff. And, Dooku's like, is that really what we're doing?
Yeah.
But now to get to this episode again, another element of it besides the whole, Dooku Mace relationship is the fact that you're also starting to see a little bit of, and again, it's tough to see where all this is falling, right? Like, we don't really know how long before the Phantom Menace takes place, but we know the Republic is there, and you're seeing somewhat of a, what's the best way to put it? Almost like sort of piercing the veil, right? Like the Republic seems to be this big kumbaya group of planets and everything that are, but yet you have this one senator who's basically just getting rich off the resources of his planet by exploiting them. And then you basically have, this Jedi, Katri, who comes in, and then the guards end up killing her. And then, of course, they end up killing the senator. So life is not exactly, shall we say, in harmony with each other, I mean, I think that this points out something that is easily overlooked, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think that, even from the first episode that we saw with when Dooku had Qui-Gon,
right?
Once again, same thing.
Yeah.
So this is two scenarios where he's seeing this and he's just like, okay, why am I the only person who sees this as a problem? Like, okay, you got one guy, like the people thought it was so bad that they felt like they had to kidnap his kid in order to get him to listen to him. And then now you got this other guy who's like, their guards killed a Jedi master, and now these, it's like, all right, well, we find out that he's corrupt, and so it's like, okay, well, who are we really fighting for?
Or
Because
keeping
like
peace
these people,
Yeah.
like we're, like you said, we're keeping peace for these bureaucratical fat cats, and it's like, they're the problem.
Well, and they're
And we're
almost
just keep showing
oligarchs
up.
at this point. And the other thing
It's like they're
is,
weaponizing us.
yes, and you also bring up a really good point too that I didn't actually. I mean, I think I connected it subconsciously, but not really consciously, and that is both of these incidents happened while Dooku was there to see it. And this is probably reinforcing the. I don't know if we're on the right. It's almost like he's not at the point where he thinks that being a Jedi is being on the wrong side. It's really more the Jedi are paying attention to and trusting the wrong people. And hey, maybe before we go run out and follow orders, maybe we should, I don't know, look into this stuff a little, which of course brings me to almost my original point of detective, right? Detective Dooku.
Right.
I mean, they made Loki and Loki a detective. Why not make Dooku one?
Yeah, this would be cool. Actually, I would love to see. And that's kind of a cool thing because the Jedi are kind of they are a form of law enforcement.
Right.
So it's kind of like, well, why wouldn't you have detective, like maybe you have a detective bureau or people who are really good at sensing deception and stuff in people and that type of stuff. Like, and I would love to see what those, like, what a precinct of Jedi would be like, like a Law and Order, Jedi edition or something like that. Like that would be actually kind of cool.
Yeah, or, if you wanted to, because maybe from a marketing perspective, you might be a little bit afraid of creating all these unknown characters and stuff. You could have, like, okay, let's go back. Obviously, this would be easier to do in animation, but you go back and just go, okay, here's Mace and Dooku again, and they're solving mysteries, essentially. You don't frame it like that, maybe, but that's just a natural part of what they do.
Well, that's kind of and if you kind of think about it, it just dawned on me. It brings light to the Phantom Menace because they dispatched Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to deal with that trade dispute. And the first thing he's like, yeah, I sense deception. He's like, but Qui-Gon being Dooku's apprentice, it was like, all right, you could tell he's got some of his former master's wits about him.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I sense an unusual level amount of fear for something as trivial as this trade, negotiation. So it's kind of like Qui-Gon has that discernment as well. Like, okay, this is supposed to be something that's neat and tidy, but yet there's a whole lot of fear going on around here. Why? And now he's pressing these questions, and then, of course, Obi-Wan's like, Obi-Wan's trying to, almost kind of quietly check, Qui-Gon's thoughts on it. It's like, well, and Qui-Gon replies back, but be mindful of the present, but not at the expense of the moment, or the future, but not at the expense of the moment. Like, you have to be present and see what's going on right now. Like, stop trying to look so far into the future that you miss what's happening right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same thing Dooku was trying to tell Mace, in so many words.
Yeah, and I mean, it's true. You could actually think about it. And this is why I say that when people think of political thrillers or mystery and stuff like that, you don't necessarily have to have an Andor type show for that. You could still use the Jedi and all that stuff. It's not necessarily the lore versus a war. You can, because like you said, the Jedi uses stuff all the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be these spectacular lightsaber battles and whatever, but you could focus more on that side of being a Jedi Knight or master even. That occasionally you do run across these underlying mysteries that need to be solved, and these guys are uniquely capable and possess certain qualities that obviously aid in that respect. So absolutely. And that's why I thought that this was a really cool episode, actually, because it really was, in a lot of ways, I think anyway, connected to episode 2, which I think was called Justice, maybe?
Oh, you talking about episode 2, the Tales of the Jedi? I thought you were talking about...
No, because I'm trying to avoid,
I know.
especially this is dealing with prequel era stuff, I will always say Attack of the Clones. I won't, and Revenge of the Sith. I'm not gonna, I mean, until we get past, actually, this is the last episode we'd have to do that, because if we say episode 4, we're gonna know contextually what we're talking about.
Right.
But right now, yeah, exactly. If I say episode 2, you're like, oh yeah, where was that? But I mean, so far, I gotta say, I like these episodes. They're very succinct and well done. They breathe. Because the problem with a lot of these things that are, 10 or 15 or 20 minutes long, usually when they try to do something like that, you feel like they're rushing through things, Like, it doesn't have any time to breathe. It's like little mini Rise of Skywalkers. But this show, in each of the 3 episodes, and look, guys, we're halfway through reviewing this first season of the show. There's 6 episodes. We're finishing up episode 3 now. So I think it's really interesting that you have a situation to where they're short, right? They're only, on average, maybe about 15 minutes long, but yet there's a lot of content there. It breathes. It's not rushed. And, yeah, they're very well written. And this episode, I think, is included in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's one of the things I love about this series. I mean, of course, I wish they were a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they might put in more filling stuff into it, where I like the fact that they kind of get straight to the point and it's really just the meat of the matter. Because this episode is probably like the last 15 minutes of a traditional Clone Wars episode, for the most part.
That's true. Yeah,
like
I got that.
This chunk right here,
yes.
It's like, okay, this would be like the last 15 minutes of a hour-long, Clone Wars episode, where the rest of it's them bouncing around and having a bunch of dialogue and, stuff is happening and it's cool, but it's like, this is the real meat of the matter. So
I also like the fact that it focuses on one thing. They're not hopping from planet to planet. Right. It's like
Yeah.
the action and everything, the whole story actually is very contained.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
one location. And this is true, actually, with all 3 of these episodes so far.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a little sneak peek, does that continue to be the case for 4, 5, and 6?
I won't tell. No, that's right.
Oh,
No, it does.
geez.
No, yeah, it does. It keeps that same contained, if you will, throughout all the, and that's what I love about it. It gets straight to it, and uh, man, it's the other ones coming up, man. It's just so much packed into it. You're just like, ugh, now you want. It's like now it's the opposite. Like you want more, but at the same time, you know, if you gave me more, would I really get the more that I'm looking for? That's kind of rhyme. I kind of
Wow,
like that.
yeah, it was like, okay, it's like a little soliloquy there.
Yeah, it's like a little freestyle over
Yeah.
here.
But I mean, I know what you're
So-
saying, though. You know, where it's one of those things that if you actually got more, would it pay off? Would it be rewarding? Would it be what you're looking for?
What
Would
you-
it be, yeah. And I think that there's a balance there. You know, I mean, there's that word again whenever we talk about Star Wars. But I think that, yeah, one of the things that this series was designed to do, and I can tell that it keeps ramping up to that, all the way to presumably the final episode, is that not only are you getting these really cool, well-written episodes and you get to revisit some of these characters again, but at the same time, you're getting a lot more canon. You know, you're getting a lot more stuff that is filling in some more of the canon and stuff like that. So it's not just these randomized stories. I mean, it's basically filling in the gaps during the time period in which this all takes place. So yeah, this is, so far I really, really am enjoying this series.
What would you rate this particular episode?
Yeah, it's tough because it's sort of like, you know, just reading ahead to the other episodes, it's like, ooh, do I really want to? But I mean, if I had to rate this episode, I'd have to give it a 9. I'd have to do it because the episode, not only was it a really good story, but it was done so well, succinctly. The pacing was near perfect. You know, there's just so much about this episode that just knocked it out of the park, that even if this wasn't your favorite, you know, maybe you don't really care that much about Mace or Dooku or whatever. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people might go, this episode was okay. But from a technical perspective, it was so well done. The music was phenomenal. Just the whole tone of the episode, the story. Yeah, I'd have to give it a 9.
Okay. I think I would side with you on that because it was a it showed the Jedi in a different vein, like the whole detective thing. I really enjoyed that, and I think that was something that people really don't get a chance to see that often. And so, not to say it has never been done, because it has, but you know, this, like you said, with it being so contained, so succinct, it forces it to it pushes it to the forefront. So, I'll give it a 9 as well.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, it also gave you a little bit of that, once again, that balance between light and dark, and you can understand a little bit, because one of the things that a lot of people question was, how did Dooku go to the dark side, right? I mean, he was Yoda's pupil, Padawan, whatever, and obviously Palpatine got to him somehow, but how? Well, here you're starting to see the seeds. You're seeing basically this is what Palpatine is going to later use to probably bring him all the way to the dark side.
Oh, yes.
And it's probably something along the lines of, hey, you see all this corruption in the Jedi, you see all this stuff. If you join me, we can end that. I can give you the power to end all of this. It's a flip side of the Anakin argument. Anakin, I could give you the power to save everybody you love. Whereas with Dooku, it's probably like I can give you the power to pretty much stomp out any corruption, injustice, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I would love to see, because we know that Dooku becomes the head of the Separatists. I almost wonder how like Andor felt about Dooku. Like, what was his thoughts on him?
I know. And being that Andor was a Separatist at one point, obviously Dooku was probably a hero of his. That's where it's going to get really. That's what I can't wait until. Probably realistically, it's going to be more season 2 of Andor. That starts to deal with the, hey, I was a Separatist, this is kind of the way I felt about everybody. That's where I think you're going to get some of that. But that remains to be seen. But again, as we say on every show, it's not, at the end of the day, how we felt about it. All we're doing is bringing the discussion to you guys and kind of hosting everything. It's really about what you guys felt and what you guys think. So be sure to let us know in the comment section. We actually didn't get any chats today. That was very, very strange. Although it's not a bad thing. I mean, it allows us to actually, But then again, the whole point of this show is to actually discuss Star Wars with everybody. But the good news is, the live chat is not the only way that could be done. That's right. We actually read that little part of YouTube called the comment section. So when you guys leave comments and leave likes, we definitely encourage you, while you guys are there, to leave a like for us and perhaps subscribe to the channel if you guys are interested in more intellectual Star Wars discussion, no toxicity, just a really good, nice, chill analysis and discussion. This show is very much a bunch of people coming together and talking about Star Wars, just like you would with, your friends or whatever. It's kind of like, look, let's all build this one big community. So let us know what you guys thought of this episode, and let us know what you guys are thinking about Dooku's story arc in particular. We'd be curious to know about that. So this Friday, looks like we got episode 11 of Andor.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, at the same time, we've actually been reviewing the Andor series. So the way this has fallen, because of course, a lot of Star Wars content has been dropped in our laps. So on Fridays, we're reviewing Andor, and on Mondays, we're reviewing Tales of the Jedi. Now, we've only got 2 more episodes of Andor, and we've only got 3 more episodes of Tales of the Jedi. So, who knows where we'll go from here. Probably just back to discussing all the Star Wars news. But anyway, join us Friday night, 8 o'clock. Check out our review of Andor. If you guys missed any of our other reviews, they're all on the channel. We got an Andor Season 1 playlist, so be sure to check that out. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.